Alright guys, let's go ahead and get started with this study guide. It's going to take a while because there's a lot of questions. I'm going to start with drawing a segment for number 1 and labeling it CM and putting A as the midpoint. Because A is the midpoint, I know that they are congruent to each other. And it says if CA is 2x minus 3 and CM is 5x minus 11, they want me to find AM. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and mark that the entire length, which is 5x minus 11. And for CA, I'm going to put 2x minus 3. For AM, I'm also going to do the same thing because they're congruent, because A is the midpoint. So I'm going to take 2x minus 3 plus 2x minus 3, and I'm going to set it equal to 5x minus 11. I'll combine like terms and get 4x plus 3 equals 5x minus 11. I'm going to move things around, so I'm going to subtract my 4x and subtract my 4x. I'll end up with 3 equals x minus 11. And, oh, whoops, sorry, I forgot that that was a 6, a minus 3, and this would be a minus 6. So now I'm going to add 11 and add 11, and I'll end up with 5 equals x. All right, don't forget that I had to combine negative 3 and negative 3, and I got negative 6 and a negative 6. So now I'm going to plug that back in. I'm going to use 2x minus 3, so I'm going to say 2 times 5 minus 3, that would be 10 minus 3, which gives me 7. So I now know that AM equals 7, and that's my answer. So don't forget, I had to solve for x, and then I had to solve for AM. Then it asks, where does the line intersect the plane? Name an intersection of the line and the plane. So we're looking for a point here. That would be H. And then it says, name 2 points that are coplanar. Coplanar means that they're inside this box. So your only 2 points are M and H. And name 2 points that are collinear. Well, we're looking at this line, and I'm just going to pick R and D. If you picked H and D, that's fine, or D and R, that's fine too. So next, for number 3, it says find the distance between the 2 points. Remember the distance formula, you need to have that memorized. I'm going to do y2 minus y1 squared plus x2 minus x1 squared. I'm going to label these x1 and y1 so that I don't get them mixed up, and x2 and y2 so I don't get them mixed up. And then I'm going to just plug them into the equation. So I'm going to take a negative 3. I'm going to subtract, because that's part of the formula, of 4. I'm going to square it. I'm going to add it to my negative 8 minus a negative 2, and I'll square that as well. Well, negative 3 minus 4 is a negative 7 squared. And remember, when I have 2 negatives side by side like that, that becomes a positive. So now I have a negative 8 plus 2, which is going to be a negative 6 squared. Don't forget, they're still under the radical sign. Well, if I square 7, that's 49. And if I square 6, that's 36. I add them together, I get rad 85. You can leave it as the distance equals rad 85, or you can approximate it and do it in your calculator and get 9.2. That's number 3. For number 4, find the midpoint of CH if C has the coordinates negative 5, negative 2, and H has the coordinates of 9, negative 4. Again, I'm going to use the midpoint formula. Well, not again, but I'm going to use the midpoint formula, x1 plus x2 divided by 2, and y1 plus y2 divided by 2. I'll go ahead and plug these in. This is x1, this is y1, this is x2, and this is y2. So I'm going to take my x's, add them together. I'll get a negative 5 plus 9 divided by 2, and then I'll take my y's and add them together, a negative 2 plus a negative 4 divided by 2. All right, well, negative 5 and a positive 9 is a 4 divided by 2, and then a negative 6 divided by 2. I'll go ahead, and 4 divided by 2 is 2, and negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. Those are your answers. Okay, number 5 is where things get tricky. What I will do to try to help you is go ahead and draw a diagram. It says that M is the midpoint of CH, so here's M. And it has the coordinates of 5, 3. All right, so we know it's the midpoint of CH. And then we know that H has the midpoints of, or point of negative 9, negative 1. Okay, so we need to plug this into the midpoint formula. The only thing is this time we're trying to find our C value, this X and the Y. So what I'm going to do is just plug in the information that I know. So negative 9 plus X, because I want to find that X, divided by 2 equals my midpoint. So equals 5. All right, that's the X value of my midpoint. And then for the Y, it's going to be kind of similar. It's going to be negative 1 plus Y divided by 2 equals 3. All right, they equal my midpoint. I need to get rid of these 2's, so what I need to do is I'm going to multiply by 2 on both sides. These will cancel out. I'll be left with a negative 9 plus X equals 10. To get X by itself, I'm going to add 9 and get X equals 19. All right, I'm going to need to do the same thing over here. So times 2 and times 2 because I need to get rid of that divide by 2. I'll end up with a negative 1 plus Y equals 6. I'm going to add 1 to get Y by itself and add 1 and get Y equals 7. So I now know that C equals 19, 7. That's my answer for number 5. Draw a picture to explain segment addition. You guys could have drawn it however you wanted. I went ahead and did AB plus BC. It equals AC. All right, that was drawing my picture to explain it. And then I did 2 angles. I added them together, and they equal a third angle. So I went ahead and labeled my angle A, B, C. All right, and again, I had C, B, and D. So if I added angle ABC to angle CDB, I ended up with angle A, right? We're adding that side, B, and D. Just to give you a little visual, that C is still here, but because I combine the 2 angles, it's in the middle now, and we don't really need to talk about it. So I'm just saying ABD. Right, then we get to problem number 8, and this is definitely a challenging problem because I need to find X and Y and the angle measures, all of my angle measures. So what I'm going to do is I can't set these 2 vertical angles equal. There's a Y there and an X here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to identify this straight angle. And that's 20. I'm going to add those 2 angles together and set them equal to 180. It's going to be 25x plus 8 plus 9x plus 2 equals 180. All right, I'm adding them together, setting them equal to 180 because that's a straight angle there. I'm going to combine like terms and get 34x plus 10 equals 180. I'll subtract the 10 and get 34x equals 170. I'll divide by 34 and get x equals 5. So I've solved for x. Now I'm going to solve for y. So here's my x, here's my y now. Well, these are equal because they're vertical angles. So I'm going to do 7y plus 5 equals 9. And this time where that x is, plug in 5. Times 5 plus 2. Well, 9 times 5 is 45. Plus 2 is 47. So I have 7y plus 5 equals 47. I'm going to subtract the 5 from both sides and get 7y equals 42. divide by 7, divide by 7, y equals 6. So now I know x and y, and I need to find each of these angles, angles 1, angles 2, and angles 3. To find angle 1, all I do is plug in my y value, which was 6. So 6 times 7, right? Here's my y, is going to be 42 plus 5 would be 47 degrees. Angle 2 is going to be similar. I'm going to do 25 times my x value, which is 5, and add 8. 25 times 5 is 125. 125 plus 8 is 133. Okay, same thing for angle 3 here. I'm going to take my 5, multiply it by 9, and get 45, and then add 2 and get 47 degrees. All right, let's go ahead and move to the next page. What is the definition of parallel lines? The parallel lines, I'm just going to write the symbol. Whoops, it's kind of hard to see. And say lines with the same slope and never cross. Skew lines are lines in different planes that cross in their different planes. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight some. I need to get my highlighter. The first that I'm going to do is skew lines. All right, here is a set of skew lines, the ones in pink. That's a pair of skew lines. And now I'll go ahead and highlight a pair of parallel lines. Right here and right here is a set of parallel lines. So I did parallel in purple and skew in pink. All right, moving along to number 9. This is kind of a confusing question. It says, in the following diagram, C is the midpoint of AE. So if I look here and see C, I know that these two segments are congruent to each other because C is the midpoint. B is the midpoint of AC. So I now know that these two segments are congruent to each other. And then it tells me that CD is equal to 3, so I know from here to here is 3, and that AB is equal to 7. So right here, I know that AB from A to B all the way right here is 7. It wants me to find AC. Well, if I know that AB is the midpoint, that B is the midpoint, and AB equals 7, I also know that BC equals 7. So what I would need to do to find AC is do 7 plus 7, and I would get 14. All right, DE is a little bit different. Since I know that this entire segment now is equal to 14, and I know that this piece is 3, I would do 14 minus 3, and I would get 11. All right, the coordinate for B is a little bit different. Right? If I know that A is negative 10 and that to get to B I move up 7, I know that the point for B would be negative 3. The point for C, well, I would also have to move up 7, and that would put me at a positive 4. From negative 3 up 7 would put me at a positive 4. And then the point for D, from that 4, I would have to move up 3 places, and that would put me at 7 for point D. Okay, here we go for number 10. And it's, trying to find the place here. R, S, and T are collinear. Right, so we have R, S, and T. And it tells me that S is between R and T. RS equals 2W plus 1, and ST equals W minus 1. RT, the entire segment, is equal to 18. It says use the segment addition postulate to solve for W, then determine the length of RS. Draw a picture to help. Well, we already drew a picture. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take 2W plus 1 plus W minus 1 and set it equal to 18. I'm taking both parts of the segment, adding them together, and setting it equal to the entire segment. I'll end up with 3W, these ones cancel out, equals 18. I'll divide by 3 and divide by 3 and get W equals 6. Then it wants to know RS. Well, for RS, I'm just going to plug it in right here. So I'm going to do 2 times 6 plus 1, and I will get 13. So RS equals 13. All right, moving along to number 11. It says that C is the midpoint of RT. So here's RT, C is the midpoint. That means these two segments are congruent if C is the midpoint. And that WCV is congruent to VCT. So these two angles are congruent. First thing it says is name a ray opposite to CT. Well, if CT is right here, then opposite, forming a straight line, would be CR. Right? There's our ray. And then it says name two congruent segments. Well, since C is the midpoint of TR or RT, I would say that TC is congruent to CR. All right, and then using letters, it says right there, SC plus CW would equal SW. This segment plus this segment equals the whole segment. And then if we look here, angle RCS, C would be the vertex. All right, right where the angle comes to a point. Oh gosh, it's kind of hard to see. I'm sorry about all of that. And it says the sides of angle RCW. Name the sides. So here's angle RCW. Well, one side would be CW, and the other side would be CR. And it says name an angle bisector. Your only angle bisector is CV, because that's the only angle where you see two congruent angles. So you know that if it's coming through those and those two are congruent, that they have to be, that has to be an angle bisector. All right, then it says VCT, so VCT plus TCS equals 1. Oh, whoops, sorry, not 180. Why did I do that? VCT plus TCS is going to equal angle VCS. And then if WCT equals 40, then WCV would be 40 divided by 2, which would equal 20. Because these two angles are cut in perfect halves, right? Two equal parts. And if the measure of WCT, this whole angle right here, equals 50, then TCS would be 130. All right, let's look down here. We're still going. All right, if the measure of angle 6, here's angle 6, equals 80, then angle 5 right here would have to be 100. They create a straight angle, so if this is 80, you know that's 100. And angle 9 appears to be a complementary angle. Whoops, I forgot the Y. Because if you notice this box, it shows that it's a right angle, and the two of them make that right angle, so complementary. And the measure of angle GHL would also be 90 degrees, because if that's 90 degrees and this is a straight line, then this has to be 90 as well. And then it says if the measure of angle 9 equals 2x plus 5, and the measure of angle 8 equals 3x, solve for x. Well, we've already talked about them adding to 90 and being complementary, so what we're going to do is we're going to do 2x plus 5 plus 3x equals 90. That would be 5x plus 5 equals 90. And I will have 5x equals 85, and then x is going to equal 17. Okay, let's move over to number 13. Use the figure to answer the questions. Measure of ABD and the measure of DBC. So if ADB and DBC, these two angles here, if you add them together, you get 180 degrees. They form a straight angle. And if BF bisects angle ABE, then angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. Or if you wanted to write angle FBE, that is fine too. The measure of angle 2 and the measure of angle 3 equal the measure of angle FBC. Measure of angle 1, or measure of angle 2 and the measure of angle 3, FBC. Another name for angle 3 would be angle EBC, this angle right here from E to B to C. And 3 is adjacent to what other acute angle? Well, it's adjacent to this angle over here, but that's not acute. So angle 2 is the only angle it's adjacent to that's acute. So angle FBE. All right, let's move on to our next page. Ooh, okay. So the big thing about this is we want to mark up this picture. All right, K and M are opposite rays. That means we've got a straight line right here. And that KN bisects this angle JKL. So we went ahead and drew congruency markers. It says if angle JKN, this angle right here, and angle NKL, these angles right here, if one of them equals 8x minus 13 and the other equals 6x plus 11, find x in JKN. All right, well, these are the two angles that are bisected, so we know that they're congruent. I'm going to set them equal to each other, which means I'm going to do 8x minus 13 equals 6x plus 11. I'm going to move my x's over. I'll end up with 2x minus 13 equals 11. I'm going to add 13 to both sides and get 2x equals 24. Divide by 2 and get x equals 12. All right, so that's what x equals. Then it wants me to find JKN. So angle JKN. I'm going to go ahead and plug in that 12. So 8 times 12 minus 13. And when I do that, I'll get the measure of angle JKN equals 83 degrees. And then x equals 12. All right. So moving along, it says suppose that JKL equals 9y plus 15. So JKL is this whole angle, and all of it equals 9y plus 15. JKN is this little angle right here, and it equals 5y plus 2. Well, these angles are both congruent, so if I know that this is 5y plus 2, I know that this is 5y plus 2 as well. So to solve this, I'm going to do 2 times 5y plus 2 equals 9y plus 15. I'm going to distribute and end up with 10y plus 4 equals 9y plus 15. I'm going to move my 9 over and I'm going to have y plus 4 equals 15. I'm going to subtract 4 and get y equals 11. Then I need to find JKL. So I'm going to go ahead and JKL, I'm going to plug in that 11 to this expression right here for JKL. Oh, sorry, that's kind of hard to read. So it's going to be 9 times 11 plus 15. 99 plus 15, and that will be 114 degrees. So the measure of angle JKL equals 114. And now we move up. And this time it gives me JKN. It says that it is 3x plus 30, and it gives me LKM, which is 2x. It doesn't give me this angle right here, NKL. But I know that it's congruent, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 2 times 3x plus 30, add it to 2x, and I'm going to set it equal to 180 because all 3 of these angles create a straight line which equals 180. I'm going to distribute that 2 and get 6x plus 60 plus 2x equals 180. Right, I'm going to combine like terms and get 8x plus 60 equals 180. I'm going to subtract 60 and get 8x equals 120. And I'm going to divide and get x equals 15. So I got x equals 15, and now I'm going to solve for NKL. I'm going to plug in that 15. So I'm going to do 3 times 15, right? I'm going to use JKN because they're the same angle, right? They're congruent to each other. Plus 30, so 45 plus 30 equals 75. So I know the measure of angle NKL equals 75. All right, and on to our last page. If we look, collinear would be F, points that lie on the same line. Midpoint formula would be right here, C. A segment bisector would be G. A segment line or plane that intersects a segment at its midpoint. A plane would be A. A flat surface that extends indefinitely in all directions. The distance formula would be D, which is right here. It's hard to see. And congruent angles would be I, angles that have equal measure. Okay, so let's move on. And I'm going to zoom out one so hopefully we can see all of this. Angle 1 and 2 are supplementary angles. That means they add to 180. So I'm going to take angle 1 and angle 2, 4x plus 8x, and set it equal to 180. That's going to give me 12x equals 180. Supplementary is the key here, guys. And I'm going to divide both sides by 12. I'm going to get x, and that's going to be 15. So that's x. Now, to find angle 1, I'm going to do 4 times 15, and I am going to get 60 degrees. So the measure of angle 1 equals 60 degrees. Now I'm going to find angle 2, and again I'm going to plug in x. I'm going to do 8 times 15, and I'm going to get the measure of angle 2 equals 120 degrees. This time it's telling me they're complementary. That means they're going to add to 90. So I'm going to do x plus 24 plus x equals 90 degrees. I'll end up with 2x plus 24 equals 90, and then end up with 2x equals 66 once I subtract the 24, and x equals 33. Wow, sorry, x equals 33. Now, for angle 4, it's just x, so I'm going to say the measure of angle 4 equals 33. That'll be one of them. And then for angle 3, I'm going to do 33 plus 24 and get the measure of angle 3 equals 57 degrees. All right, 2 lines intersect to form an angle. All right, if the 2 lines are adjacent, one's going to be 2 angles are adjacent. That means they're touching. And then 5x minus 27. All right, well, they intersect. They're 2 lines. So what we're going to do is we're going to do 4x, one of the angles, plus 5x minus 27 equals 180. It equals 180 because they're adjacent and they form a straight line because it was talking about lines. I'm going to combine like terms and get 9x minus 27 equals 180. I'm going to move that 27 over, adding it because it's negative, so 9x equals 207. I'll divide by x and get x equals 23. And the measure of those 2 angles. So I'm going to say this is angle 1, this is angle 2. Angle 1 is going to be equal to 4 times 23, which will be 92. So the measure of angle 1 equals 92, and angle 2, I'm going to do 5 times 23 minus 27, and that will give me 88 degrees. Measure of angle 2 equals 88 degrees. All right, I'm running out of time. It's almost 6th period. Okay, angle 1 and 2 are vertical angles, right? That means they're congruent. They're equal to each other. So to solve, I'm going to do 16x minus 9 equals 4x plus 3. I'm going to subtract that form and end up with 12x minus 9 equals 3. And I'm going to add 9 to both sides and get 12x equals 12, which means x equals 1. All right, I'm going to find each of those angles. So angle 1, I'm going to plug that 1 in. 16 times 1 minus 9, which will give me the measure of angle 1 equals 7. And angle 2, the same thing. I'm going to plug in 4 times 1 plus 3 equals 7. So the measure of angle 2 equals 7. Measure of angle 2. Okay, now I have 2 separate angles. I know that they're supplementary, so they're going to add to 180. So I'm going to have 2 angles that add to 180. The first angle is just going to be x. That's going to be my first angle. Right, so here's one angle. The next angle, it needs to add to that. It's twice the measure of the angle, so 2 times x, and then 30 more. So here's one angle, 2x plus 30, plus the other angle, x, equals 180. So I'll end up with 3x plus 30 equals 180. I'll move that 30 over and end up with 3x equals 150. I'll divide by 3 and get x equals 50. All right, so now I know my first angle, angle 1, is going to be equal to 50 degrees. My second angle, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to plug in. 2 times 50 is 100. Angle 2 would be 130. 2 times 50 is 100 plus 30 is 130. Add them in. And you guys are done. Yay! I'll see you later.